So, myself and the rest of the team recently returned from a trip to Sabi Sabi. It was a great trip in terms of team building. We had some incredible sightings, but one that I really wanted to mention with all of you was one that we had of a male leopard, and we pretty much searched for him all morning. We had his tracks up and down, and we had alarm calls all over the show. And we just simply were one step behind him constantly. And that's the difficulty when you are following leopards, is that their movements are so unpredictable, and it's very difficult to identify what exactly they've done, especially when they leave the road. They could be hunting, they could be moving in undercover, trying to stay elusive, stay away from anything, try and avoid alarm calls. You've got to remember that leopards by nature are generally very shy and elusive animals. And we tracked and tracked and tracked most of the morning. And yes, it does get a little bit frustrating when you're on foot and you see the tracks and they're nice and they're crisp and they're fresh. But yet you just that little bit behind. You can hear squirrels alarm calling in the distance. You get in the vehicle, you drive there, and then the squirrels stop, and then you hear Franklin's alarm calling further up. So you drive there, you listen, you stop, and the Franklins stop. You get off, you find the fresh tracks, and you do the circular motion as the leopards try to avoid the alarm calls. But on this particular morning, we got very, very lucky. Myself and our guide, Greg, we got off the vehicle and we were busy tracking. We were following the tracks and they cut off the road. There was some Inyala that were in the area. They had been feeding, and we got off and we walked, and we could see where the tracks left the road and started heading into the dense vegetation through the thick grass. And we started walking through on this trail, and then couldn't find the tracks. We lost the tracks. It's very, very difficult. The bush is very dry yet. There were patches of soil where we could see tracks, and then there was big patches of grass as well as animal tracks where he could have gone in any direction. So having tracked him the whole morning, we were unsure of where he was going. He was actually heading more or less in the direction of camp, Salati camp, where we were staying. So we thought that maybe he was on his way to the waterhole. So while we were standing there, we discussed maybe going back to the vehicle, getting in the vehicle, and then driving towards a waterhole, and maybe just switching off and listening for any further signs of this leopard. And as we reached the road and started walking back towards the vehicle, we just heard these Inyala that we had just seen in the block going off, bull, 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 alarm calling. Now, when it comes to Inyala, kudu, bushbuck, when they alarm call, you know that they've generally seen a predator. Whereas Impala, yes, they do alarm call, but they are bottom of the food chain. So they often alarm call for the sake of alarming if they are unsure. But when you hear something like a kudu or an Inyala or a bushbuck, then you know you're on the money and that they've seen a predator. So Greg and I hightailed it down the road, ran, got in the car, super excited. Drove into the block searching. We could see all the Inyala. There was about 10 Inyala or so. They're all staring in one direction. One of them's barking. Others are running in the opposite direction. So we knew whereabouts the predator was coming from, well, the sounds of the predator was coming from. So we carried on driving through, and now it's dense vegetation. Greg's maneuvering this vehicle to avoid trees and trying to find the best path through. And suddenly your hunt spotted the leopard. And it just goes to show that you've got to sometimes put in the time. It doesn't always work out for you. Yes, you go hours, sometimes even days, tracking these animals before you actually find them. But it's the whole process. And for me, having been a full-time guide, it's a part that I really, really miss and really, really enjoy. And I think from a guest point of view, to see the whole process from start to finish, from finding the first track to hearing alarm calls, to getting off the vehicle, to have a look at tracks, hearing squirrels alarm calling, getting back in the vehicle, driving around. Is the leopard here? Has he moved off? This time of year, it's very dry, so you can imagine a leopard's dappled coat blends in very, very well with its environment. So it's very difficult to spot them, especially if a leopard doesn't want to be seen. You are not going to find it. So it does take a lot of patience and a lot of time. But we were just very, very fortunate that we were persistent, and that that our persistence paid off. We eventually found it. It was a male leopard that I had seen many, many years ago while I was still guiding at Londolozi when he was a lot younger. He's about 11 years of age. He's turning 12 this year, if I'm not mistaken. So it was incredible for me as well, just to find him, firstly, to have that whole experience of walking on foot, and eventually finding him, and the excitement of hearing the alarm calls and the nyala alarming and driving off-road, seeing the leopard, IDing the leopard, and then obviously spending the rest of the morning with that leopard. And it was really, really unbelievable just to be able to spend that time with him. And it also allowed me to reminisce of the times when I saw him when he was a lot younger. He had a brother as well that was from the same litter called the Two-Tones male, who unfortunately always found himself in trouble. When I was at Londolozi, he passed away. He had been beaten up and mauled either by other predators such as lions or another leopard or even something like a baboon. The last time I ever saw him, he was in very, very bad shape and unfortunately passed away. But his brother, he moved further south. We used to call him the Makatini male. He moved further south, set up territory, and then moved further on to Sabi Sabi. So it was really, really nice for me to see him again. He has aged quite a lot, but I also think it goes to show how incredible and resilient these animals really are. If you think of a leopard, they're solitary animals, so they spend majority of their time on their own. It's a very, very difficult life to live. You've got to set up a territory. You've got to constantly mark that territory to make sure that no other leopards move in and take over. A male leopard wants to have as big a territory as possible so you can have as many females as possible so you can mate with them and spread his seed. So he will constantly mark his territory. He'll defend it, even in fighting. Sometimes fighting leads to death. But to think that this male leopard has almost reached 12 years of age, yes, he's looking a little bit more tattered and a little bit worn out, but I think it's incredible to show that in an area like Sabi Sabi, where the predator numbers are so high, lots of hyenas, lots of lions, lots of leopards, that he's had the ability for 11 years now to avoid any serious injury, and that's excluding hunting. You know, male leopards are, especially this male, he's renowned for hunting warthogs. Now you think of a warthog with its big tusks, it's a very dangerous animal to try and tackle and take on, because if the warthog ends up tusking the leopard, that can also cause some serious damage. So it was great just to see him. Yes, he's looking a little bit older, a little bit worse for wear, but looking at him, it also tells a story of his life. I'll end this video with an image of him, and you'll see for yourself that he has the face of what can only be described as an incredible life of a leopard. I hope that you enjoyed the story. There's lots of more of them to come, and I'll share as we go along. Next week I'm off to another destination, new and exciting. I won't share too much on that yet, but obviously we'll be posting more in the following week. Anyways, that's it from my side. Hope that you all have a great day. Hope that you enjoyed the video. Catch you all soon. Cheers. Bye.